The Dog Man movie. This is a movie that I think I've talked about on my channel for I don't even want to check how long. And it's a movie I still talk to today, even after release. But the way we got here from just a simple announcement 4 years ago to now having a fully fledged film to talk about for years to come is still a surreal moment. And I wanted to get really in depth with today's video. This is a film that started off basically, honestly, in development hell. We didn't hear a lot about this movie when it first got announced. But the journey we got here, all the announcements, all the interludes of stuff we heard about, and just the film itself from start to finish. I want to make this my ultimate definitive video about Dogman. But to December of 2020, things were going okay at DreamWorks. Wait, no, what am I talking about? The world was literally on fire at that time. But at the time, DreamWorks had Trolls War tour release and Crude to New Age, both of those movies just being simply okay. But on December 9th, an announcement came that would change everything and would make people go wild. On December 9th, DreamWorks announced that they would be making an animated adaptation of the popular book Dogman. Where was I when this happened? I was asleep. When I woke up when I was going through my YouTube, I got a notification from ValskyBum94 and the thumbnail was Dogman was officially getting a movie, and I lost my mind. Most people were waiting for something like a Captain Underpants sequel for so long, but honestly, this coming out was just as good. I was just as big as a hype of a Dogman fan as I was with Captain Underpants. So seeing that DreamWorks would be at the helm again got me even more excited. And then we got the director announcement of it being Peter Hastings, who has worked on The Epic Tales of Captain Underpants, a Netflix show that ran for about a few years. It was one of the better DreamWorks shows and honestly kept us breathing after it was radio silent after the first Captain Underpants movie came out. And with him returning on this movie, you would already know that that type of humor would carry over into this movie. And that was it. That was the announcement. We just waited and waited and waited. 3 years went by without a single peep, not a single casting announcement, not a single little crack. Most people thought that this movie was stuck in development hell and we just wouldn't see this movie for a very long time. And then come August 2023, when I made that video all that time ago with Crazy Gamer Inc., it's weird to think about how long ago that was, talk about the movie finally came back. And the greatest thing that came from it, I actually got a message from Peter Hastings when I asked him where the current state of production was. He actually responded and said it was still happening and gave us a little insight that it would only be another year or so until we would get the movie. And he was right, because then bam, in January of 2024, we got the announcement that in only a year, Dogman would release in theaters on January 31st, 2025. Now we were finally getting somewhere, and the hype was just full steam ahead at that point. And over the months, we got little cracks of news. We heard that Jakks Pacifics was going to be working on toys for the movie in May. There was one looming question if this Dogman was going to be getting a voice. Whatever this decision was gonna make or break this movie. It was going to be very important if they didn't give Dogman a voice, because it would just ruin the character. We got a mini announcement, it was more of a leak, that Pete Davidson would have some involvement in the movie. We didn't know who he was playing. Most people were thinking he was gonna play Petey. And then, come September of 2024, the first Dogman trailer released. And we were correct. Petey was gonna be voiced by Pete Davidson. And when that trailer released, everything was worth the wait at this point. The movie looked beautiful. Animation was so vibrant and just full of life, and it makes sense that the movie was animated by Jellyfish Pictures, who has worked on previous DreamWorks productions such as How to Train Your Dragon and Spirit Untamed. And bringing this movie together, it really feels like you're in the comic. And the style from Captain Underpants kind of carried over into this movie, like with how the characters look. So it almost felt like a direct sequel to Captain Underpants, but not really at the same time. So the hype train was on. We didn't get another trailer from it, mostly because I'm kind of glad they didn't show everything from that trailer, so I was quite fine at first. But then DreamWorks just chose not to market this movie very well. It was to the point where a lot of people had to do the heavy lifting for this movie to be reminded that it was still coming out. Most people didn't even know it was coming out in January at the end of December. The marketing we did get was kind kinda questionable. I think there's plenty of videos on DreamWorks' Twitter page that kinda give that away. But moving that aside, there were billboards for the movie. I even saw TV spots for the movies at NFL games, which I was not expecting. So DreamWorks was giving some sort of an effort. I feel like they could have done a little better of a job, but at least they were trying. I can't say that for some other movies. And then the movie finally released. I was there opening day, sat in my seat, no popcorn bucket in hand because they were apparently gone from my theater, whatever. And I sat down and watched Dogman. And after watching it, all of the hype, all of the waiting, it all came full circle. Now, that's enough about the preview stuff about the movie. Let's get into the Dogman movie itself. Finally! The movie starts and brings us straight into the action. We get a look at OK City. We start to get a feel for the humor of the movie. And going in, there's just an array of Easter eggs before we even hear the first line of dialogue. And just seeing the world, you can really tell that the people that made this movie were really passionate about Dogman and really brought their heart and soul and tears into this movie. And you can't just stop but look in awe at how the movie looks and how you're brought into this world. We're initially brought in the middle of the action and meet Officer Knight and Greg the dog. We already get their dynamic that Officer Knight is not the brightest one and Greg the dog really has to push the smarts in their dynamic. And we just get subtle and just simple jokes, like as they're about to crash into a box that says box of bees, they get scared, but in reality, it is just a box of bees. You just get the humor already from the start. And we are almost initially, like super fast, introduced to Petey the cat. And I have to say, Pete Davidson nailed the voice. I wasn't too worried about it, but initially, that just wasn't the voice I initially thought I'd hear come out of Petey. I know everyone probably had a voice for Petey when reading the comics, but Pete Davidson really brought it all. We get introduced to him in his laboratory with his butler, where Petey is mostly knowing that Officer Knight is not the smart one and Greg's in Officer Knight's dynamic, and Greg is the smart one but lacks in his body. And then the butler says that what if they combine their powers? And Petey brings that will never happen. Subtle foreshadowing. And I kid you not, the origin story of Dogman in the movie and the book is almost beat for beat. If you look at the books, it's actually insane on how well they nailed it. Dogman and Officer Knight land on an abandoned warehouse and there is a bomb there. They have to defuse it, and it almost follows the same way. Officer Knight realizes that Greg is colorblind as he bites the wrong wire, and we're also introduced to Chief and Sarah Hadoff on this moment, and they're almost nailed down. They couldn't have picked better casting for both characters, and we finally get to hear Sarah's Australian accent finally. The scene plays out the exact same way. You open the first book, and the dialogue between the two nurses are exactly the same. Greg the dog's head is working, but his body is no good. Officer Knight's head is not working, but his body is still intact. So they come up with the plan to put them together, and we get Dogman. Now, looking at this from a general audience standpoint, most book fans are completely fine with this, but imagine being a general audience person, not knowing what you're getting into and how crazy of a concept this is. Is Officer Knight's head just lying somewhere? What happened to Greg's body? Just don't think about it too much, just have fun with it. Dogman quickly becomes a local celebrity with everybody loving him, and Chief kind of feeling overshadowed by it. One thing that actually did change from the books over to the movie is Chief having a crush on Sarah Hadoff. Initially, in the story, Chief liked the nurse, and that was a storyline that was followed in the books. But this was kind of a nice change. It doesn't really matter, honestly, in the aspect of the story, but it was cool to see. Chief and Sarah's dynamic was pretty funny, and honestly very on the nose with the jokes. One of them being about how Chief's grandma being dead, and the whole theater cackled at that moment, because that was just very unexpected.
Oh, what about that time I caught Flippy?
That story's literally a dead fish.
A psychokinetic evil fish.
That's dead.
Sarah, please, look, just give me one little story for my mother.
Okay, she's dead too.
She has very good hearing.
Again, The humor just carrying over from the Captain Underpants show is just very prevalent here. One thing that I wasn't expecting, most people in the theater were not expecting, was the emotional shift that happened in this movie. Just for a little bit, not for the entire movie. But once Dogman comes back to his house and he steps in, everything goes pale. That whole colorful vibe that we were getting from the entire movie just suddenly changed as he enters his house. He notices all the joy that's gone from it. His girlfriend left him because becoming half dog, half man just didn't sit right with her, and she left. We also see that just the whole house is already being bought out by a new couple. Dogman thinks about his relationship with Officer Knight and the perfect life he had, and now becoming Dogman, all of that is gone. It was an emotional aspect that I wasn't expecting, but it was a welcomed one. It was showing that, you know, this movie isn't all that crazy with its joyfulness, that there are some serious moments that takes its time and lets you breathe in the actual situation of what Dogman is going through right now. And I can appreciate that. We even get a shot of Dogman walking to his new house a little bit in the movie, and the scenery in the background, it was just beautiful, but also really sad at the same time. Like, I wasn't expecting that coming from the Dogman movie. It's honestly one of my favorite shots of the movie. It's just so well done. Now, getting back to Dogman and Petey. We cut back to Petey, and now he realizes that he made something even worse for him to deal with than just Officer Knight and Greg the dog. He now has both of them combined, that foreshadowing earlier, being Dogman. And they get straight to it into their dynamic and back and forth banter. We literally have a montage between the both of them. And it's a very prevalent on-the-nose montage. It wasn't like they didn't already know. They were very clear about it being a Dogman versus Petey montage. And we get a lot of cool shots. We get a lot of cool Easter eggs and stuff from the book, like the vacuum cleaner, and certain scenes literally directly from the book, which is fun to see. And please, I'm literally the only one that brings this up and everyone looks at me crazy. And the scene of the montage, does it not sound like Cuphead music? Please, just listen to this soundtrack bit. We catch back up after the montage of Dogman repeatedly failing to catch Petey, and the mayor of OK City is fed up with it at this point, and she goes up to Chief and kicks Dogman off of the case. And this little bit right here, it's little bits of comedy that this movie has that honestly had my whole theater laughing. This whole segment with Chief calling the number that the mayor gives him, and it just being life's not fair. And the cherry on top is that that number actually worked when the movie first initially came out if you called the number, and that same line would be said if you called the number. It's little bits like that that they didn't have to do, but was really cool to see nonetheless. But Dogman is disheartened by this and comes back to his house, and you still feel that mood of how much he's lost over the very short term of him being Dogman and how it's affecting him. We cut back to Petey, and now that he's fired the person that's been doing everything for him, he now has to do everything on his own. And one idea is thrown out that the only person that would work for you is you. And that's when he realizes all he needs is a clone of himself. And if you read the books, you already know where we're going with this. Petey sets an order for a cloning machine, which I'm sure will go great for him. We switch back to Dogman and Chief, and we get a very, very fast-paced introduction to Flippy the Fish. It's a lot more slowed down in the books, but here we just get a very quick rundown of it, and you kind of get the gist of it. Most of the audience kind of goes along with it. It's not too bad of an exposition, but you know, your movie's got to do what it's got to do. But we get introduced to Flippy the Fish. Now being currently dead, he's being worked on at a science lab to study all his psychokinetic powers, and now Dogman, being depromoted, now has to work as a security guard to watch over him. Petey also finds out that Flippy the Fish is being worked on in the lab and plans to steal it. It's a very quick but funny segment of Chief and Dogman going through the ground rules of what he should and shouldn't be doing while watching the cameras.
And if somebody just happens to have an Eastern gray squirrel, you look at the monitor.
Every time he looks back, Petey is moving somewhere on the cameras, and he eventually steals Swiftly the fish. And then we go into this fast-paced chase between Dogman and Petey eventually escapes, but Dogman does have a tape since he was riding on a drone and brings it back to Chief. And now we get the scene that honestly was done really well. And that was Petey using the cloning machine to bring little Petey to life. At first, he thinks the height of the clone will be exactly like his, and no, it's very short.
Step forward. Wait 18 years for your clone to reach adulthood? What? 18 years? No!
And I think they nailed down the perfect voice actor for little Petey. DreamWorks and Universal brought on Lucas Hopkins, who I think really nailed it down. He has that innocent voice that makes you care for him, and later in the movie, he just becomes the heart of the movie. But leaving that alone, little Petey and Petey go to the living spray factory, and let's just say things don't go great. Little Petey presses all the buttons, leading to Petey spiraling out and pushes Slippy the fish into the wrong tube. We quickly get to see the dynamic, which is very funny. Initially, Petey teaches little Petey all the wrong things, especially being miserable. The delivery on that line was perfect.
Stop! Oh, great! Look what you did! It went down the wrong pipe and it stuck! What is with you?
I'm miserable.
But what follows here is very much beat for beat, and also one of the best done scenes in the movie in my opinion. We start off with Petey making a box called Free Kitty and playing off as it's a new home game. It's a new game. And all know where we go from here. We get a scene that's literally identical from the book. We cut to Petey giving little Petey away to this random person on the street who asks what's the price of the free kitty, and Petey says free. Then they exchange change. Then little Petey says something that the lady doesn't like, and they ask for the money back, and it's just such a well done scene, beat for beat from the book. And it's very continuous with dialogue from the original books being directly implemented into the movie. But moving on from that, little Petey says he has to go to the bathroom and he disappears. And Petey sees this as the perfect opportunity and he leaves. Little Petey comes back only to find that his papa is gone. He looks all over for him, and again, the cinematography of the film, it's all done amazing. Little Petey realizes that no one's coming for him. He sits in his little crate in the middle of the street. Dogman is up in the buildings looking for Petey, and he actually finds him using the binoculars, but notices little Petey in the street about to be run over by a truck, so he has to make a choice, and he chooses to save little Petey. And we get the exact same shot from the art book, actually. The art book, setting aside from the scene, is actually really good, but coming back to that, Dogman and little Petey finally meet, and what follows is a really heartfelt scene. Dogman adopts little Petey as he sees no one else is looking for him and takes him as his own. That fills that gap that he's been lonely for quite a while and changes his mood, and we soon get to see that Dogman and little Petey spend a lot of time together. And meanwhile, while this is going on, when Petey finally realizes that he's been able to get rid of little Petey, he actually sees that little Petey made a comic, and when he reads it, a little hint of his good side comes out.
Look at Papa's new invention. Papa and me think the same thing. Ugh.
We soon get a montage of Dogman and little Petey living together and just having fun. In the meantime, this eventually circles back to Petey, and surprisingly, he is furious about it. And he then eventually creates the robot ADHD. Now yes, that is the joke. ADHD leads the way to Dogman's house so Petey can get little Petey back. As they're walking back to Petey's lab, Petey starts to notice that little Petey is just enjoying everything, regardless if it's either weeds or polluted lake or some mud. He kind of swats all the bad stuff away. We later get a heart-to-heart between Petey and little Petey when they go back to the lab. Petey tells little Petey that as a kid, he wasn't really given much, and his father rarely cared. And what happened was his father got a truck, took all their stuff, and left him alone. Little Petey comforts him in this moment, but that good side of Petey still hasn't come out yet. And little Petey takes it upon himself to use ADHD to call his father back, after realizing that he just doesn't seem happy at all, and seems like that would be the only way to fix it. We later pick up with Dogman, who realizes that little Petey has gone missing, and he's going all over town town with Sarah to look for him. Petey scoffs at this, seeing it on the news, but then something happens. ADHD brings in Petey's father. Now, going into this scene, most people would see this go as the usual trope that he would make amends with his father and everything would go smooth sailing after that. But no, that was not the case. He comes face to face with his father after so long, and he questions that if Petey made all this, and Petey smiles, saying yes. And then he just dismisses it and truly just doesn't care, telling him not to quit his day job. And in reality, nothing has changed with him. He still has the same personality he had all those years ago. And even so, this was done on purpose in a storytelling standpoint. Even from the books, Dave Pilkey created Grandpa, this character, to show that not everyone will really change. It's not that simple when it comes to relationships like that. And basically, as it said, some people just can't change. And this is a great example of that. Petey is initially mad at little Petey for bringing him here and questions like, why would you do this? He left me as a kid. Do you know how he feels like? And little Petey responds with, yes. My theater laughed at this moment, but in reality, this was the gut punch that made Petey start to realize the stuff he's done. But in reality, he still has his eyes set on destroying Dogman and leads out with that mission. We go back to the living spray factory where the two workers are playing with the dead Flippy the fish and throws one of them into the canister of the living spray and brings him to life. Now, the voice they gave for Flippy the fish, I was not expecting. This is also another voice I was just not expecting him to have. Ricky Gervais gives Flippy a new voice you wouldn't expect, but you can tell he's having a lot of fun with it. It's not the voice you would expect. I know when reading the book, everyone has a different voice for him. You can tell he's clearly having fun with it. He has the objective of only destroying all do-gooders, and he doesn't remember why he has the objective, but he goes along with it. With the living spray factory spraying everywhere, it brings the whole building to life to this kaiju-sized building that now leads Rampage on OK City with one objective: to destroy all do-gooders. We catch back up with Petey with his new invention ready to destroy Dogman. And this is where the final confrontation happens. Dogman, still looking for little Petey, finally finds Petey, and a high-speed chase begins, all while Flippy the fish with his building is also destroying the city. So there's two crazy things happening at once. Dogman catches Petey while riding on top of his invention and lands on a cheesesteak, leading to him finally catching Petey. But then little Petey finally shows up, and Dogman realizes that little Petey is actually the son of Petey. And once he realizes this, he's confronted with a choice on what to possibly do. The movie, funny enough, tells the audience how obvious this was in hindsight with how the story plays out.
Incredible twist here downtown. Lil Petey is actually Petey's son, and a coincidence so obvious it's not really a coincidence.
But has a little fun with it at the same time. Petey yelling out the word do-gooders leads to the final confrontation between Flippy the fish and Dogman and Petey. Petey realizes that now he's finally awake after all the tests that he did on him. But Flippy is not interested in Petey, nor is he interested in Dogman. He is only interested in Lil Petey as the biggest do-gooder out of all of them, leading to the complete opposite to happen. Little Petey is taken by Flippy the fish and walks away in the chaos. With no other choice at this point, Dogman and Petey must team up. And what follows is just so bonkers. No one coming into this movie would expect for this to turn out. They do team up and they come up with the idea to fight this giant building with a giant kaiju mecha mailman to fight the giant building, and almost like a whole Godzilla scenario fighting scene. I live for this stuff, and so some people it may not be what they were expecting, but I personally had fun with this. This screams a comic book. And the way the animation is done on this movie really works and elevates the fight scene with how the frames are integrated into the fight, and it's just great. Dogman and Petey are able to defeat the building and also split away little Petey and Flippy the fish, but honestly this was easily being pointed out by also people in the audience. There was one person in my audience that was like, the living spray factory is gonna start leaking, isn't it? And that's exactly what happens, and all the other buildings start becoming alive, all based on the different stores, one of them being based off of a dance arcade that literally just dances. They all have their little gimmicks. There's one that doesn't even care. There's one that's even George and Harold's house, which that's just one cameo that unfortunately it wasn't what most Captain Underpants fans were looking for. I knew these two movies weren't gonna connect like being in the same universe because it would be confusing, but seeing that was, at least there was some form of cameo. You also finally get the reveal that Chief was in love with Sarah Hadoff, and vice versa, Sarah Hadoff was also in love with Chief. This plotline was never forced, it was honestly just a one-time thing. They got it, they started it, and got it over with pretty quickly. It was just a funny bit.
Fine! Fine!
And all these buildings start becoming way too much for Dogman and Petey at this point. Little Petey, realizing this, knows he has to intervene at this point. He runs all the way back to Petey's lab and gets ADHD. Moving on from that, the robot is defeated, and Dogman, Petey, Sarah Hadoff, Chief, and Seamus, they're all together now. They all get stuck in the robot and have to crawl out of it. The way they crawled out of it, is interesting nonetheless. And once they do, Little Petey comes with ADHD and is able to defeat both buildings, but also falls in the process. The building's now destroyed. Flippy takes it upon himself to have to end it himself. Petey realizes this and switches places with Little Petey and the robot. He gives a distraction towards Flippy while Little Petey and Dogman come up with a plan to stop him. There's a little bit with Chief on how he's so confused with this climax of a story and how they're switching between who saves who and how it banters back and forth, but in all, they're all the heroes in this situation. Flippy decides to drop Petey over a volcano, and Lil Petey and Dogman came up with the plan, and they made a comic book. They reach the volcano, and Dogman and Flippy have their little standoff. It's kind of a funny scene, but then Lil Petey breaks the silence and gives Flippy a comic book. Now, the comic book is about Lil Petey and Flippy and all the things they've done. This makes Flippy cry, and this is a little segment that, not that it was just rushed, but we didn't really feel anything for Flippy at all since he only had like 10 minutes of screen time max. He explains that he was made fun of by the rest of the fish in his school and how he's just always wanted to take the revenge out on the world. I think that was done on purpose. I don't think it was meant to be that meaningful of a moment, but the real moment that was meaningful was Dogman realizing that the last thing he was going to be able to use to save Petey was the ball that Officer Knight gave him all that time ago. And it's his last memory of Officer Knight. After that, he has nothing else. The house is gone. The only memory he has of him is his own body and himself. So he uses the ball and saves Petey. In a pretty interesting position of him catching him, mind you.
Treat me like white teeth.
Even though Petey did help save the city, which they did acknowledge is like completely destroyed. Most movies don't even acknowledge it, but it was funny they did here. Everyone claims he's now a do-gooder, but in reality, Petey claims that no, he's not a do-gooder. He's still rotten. He's still rotten to the core, and he tells Little Petey to come with him. But they have some form of common ground with Dogman now. After the events of that conclusion, we pick up with Little Petey and Petey returning back to the lab, and everything is gone. We see a truck driving by, and it's Grandpa, and he took everything with him. And Petey is not surprised by it, but Little Petey is. All that was left was his comics. Petey realizes that obviously Little Petey can't live here anymore. So he takes Petey with him to Dogman's house. This slowly starts changing Little Petey. He starts noticing more of the bad in the world instead of the positive things. Petey notices this and sits him down for a second. This is also one of the best scenes in the movie. Just the scenery, the dialogue, and just everything that follows this. Petey sits him down and tells him that, yeah, the world has a lot of problems, and yeah, there is a lot of them, but the world isn't all that bad. It has some good things, and one of the good things that happened to Petey was him having Little Petey. And Little Petey responds to this that so is Dogman. Petey, realizing what he must do, he walks over to Dogman's house and tells him that he knows that they're arch enemies and everything, but Little Petey brought them together and they have a common ground. So they leave their relationship on. Little Petey can stay over with Dogman and vice versa. Dogman is thrilled about this. Petey goes back to fix his lab, and we bring the movie to a conclusion. Everyone's story starts wrapping up, and they live happily ever. Well, one more building shows up, and it's the disco building from before. And in Dogman fashion, that's how the movie ends. Of course, it's Peter Hastings' way of humor, and it works perfectly. And that's how the movie ends. And with that brings our Dogman review to a conclusion. All in all, Dogman isn't a perfect movie, but it was put with passion, and it's just a very fun movie to have. And I'd say amazing adaptation of the Dogman books. The movie brings such a burst of color, all the animation in between just brings it all together with the comic booky feel, and you could tell that all the voice actors gave it their all in this film. None of these celebrity voice actors felt like they were phoning it in. On top of being able to master Dogman being a silent protagonist, when they could have easily casted Dogman as a random celebrity and no one would bat an eye within the studio about it. But they stuck to the books and kept Dogman a silent protagonist, and they made it work. One thing people will say, which is kind of true, the movie does slightly focus on Petey, and honestly, Petey and Little Petey are the heart of this movie. Yes, Dogman is at the center point because he's the main character and everything, but Petey also brings a lot with his story, and Little Petey brings both stories together. Dogman's dealing with his own problems, and Petey has his own, and Little Petey brings those two together. Not fully fixing the problem, but puts a good moving point for both of their stories. Some argue that the movie might have been better off as a TV show, with how the plot was kind of structured. And I could argue, Dogman's still validated as a movie, but it is true with all the source material that Dogman has that a sequel series could work. It's looking more and more slim that a Dogman sequel could happen, because the movie is actually still doing really well. It blew past what the Captain Underpants movie made and still chugging along. At this point, it should stop, because we did get a release in April, but I think that's pretty much over now. As regards to a sequel series, it won't be 3D animated if we do get that, because unfortunately it's looking more and more slim since Jellyfish Pictures, the animation studio that also worked on the Dogman movie, is now bankrupt. Not fully shut down, but bankrupt. So we don't know the future of Jellyfish Pictures, and if they go under, the chances of a Dogman sequel are slim to none. And that's probably what was for the best to not lean into a sequel from the first movie, because then it would have left people off, because there was no guarantee we would get a sequel. And I don't have no problem with that. We're still getting plenty of Dogman content. We have a Dogman book releasing at the end of the year that, again, will be focusing on Big Jim. That's a whole video for another day. But honestly, the future still is bright. A sequel show could happen. It's, all up to Dave Pilkey and everything. Peter Hastings has already worked on the Captain Underpants show, so I know he'd do amazing with a sequel show. Just comes down to where the future lies. The whole team that put this movie together was really passionate about the source material, same for the voice actors. Like, if you look at the art book and all the possible concept art that was worked on, and all the Easter eggs that were hidden throughout the movie, they really cared about what they were making. And with adaptations, honestly, in our day and age, it's far in between that we get this level of passionate adaptations. And when it comes to people comparing the Captain Underpants movie and Dogman movie, I can't really compare the two. In terms of one being better than the other, I don't have a stance on that. Both movies have their highs and lows, but it doesn't really warrant one being better than the other. They're both amazing movies for people to watch, and Captain Underpants has ended up as a classic over time. And will Dogman get to this status? I feel like it will. It has that momentum from almost everyone that's watched it. From what I've heard, they've all loved it. And as years go on and people reminisce about DreamWorks adaptations, Dogman will be one of the more positive ones. Because DreamWorks, with adaptations, have been chugging along pretty well, Riley the Robot, Dogman, and more in the future. But where I stand on it, will Dogman end up being a modern classic? I believe it will. And from years to come, I'll still be reminiscing about sitting down for the first time watching Dogman on the big screen and my inner child going wild that I was seeing the character I would read at every Scholastic book fair and have all the books out there on the big screen for everyone to watch. And no one can really take that away from me. It's just a surreal feeling. I had that same tingly feeling with the Captain Underpants movie, and I think they hit the spot dead on. Now, the question is, will this be my last Dogman video? For a while it will be, or if the bills have to be paid, nah. But I feel like I've come full circle on this project. From the date it was announced, to all the videos I've made about it, hyping it up, till now, to have the movie not only just come out, but fully set in with multiple rewatches. I now have my definitive view on the Dogman movie. And it's a journey we've all come across, and there was a light at the end of the tunnel. This is a chapter that ends on my channel. Will there be a movie that comes to this height of status? Probably eventually, but this is a part of my channel that most people will remember for. Most people come to me as, oh, the Dogman and Captain Underpants guy. Same goes for Crazy Gamer Inc. But I'm happy to have brought all these Dogman content to you guys and get you hyped for the movie. And I hope that the movie delivered on those promises to you as well. So I bring you to this question. What is your definitive review of Dogman? This is quite a lot to talk about. So I'll let you guys leave it down in the comments. And wow, it's been a wheel-riled ride, honestly. And whoa, I think I forgot a Crazy Gamer Inc. cameo.
No, Chili. No, I will not talk about my thoughts on the Dogman movie. I already wrote a 10,000 word video. I am not talking about it anymore. Everybody should unsubscribe from him and subscribe to me because he keeps stealing my views. But yeah, I really love the movie. I love it so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're just gonna forget that post ever happened. But all in all, this has been my definitive review about DreamWorks' Dogman. And now I turn this over to you. What did you think of the movie? And I will catch you guys in the next video, because this video took so long. Peace out, everybody.